CJ here live at DC Black Film Festival. Wow. And I am here with.
Hosanna Manchusi, writer and director of Opus.
So I think musical, not musical, but just movies about, I guess, musical talent people. It's kind of, few and far between. You get them in movies, it's either just a straight up musical or it might be just about one person, but never really focus on what they do. And I feel with this one, you focus on the bassist and such, which is kind of a rarity. So when you went about it, going about the story, what was kind of like your first step in telling this?
Cool. So for me, the first step was to be authentic, because what inspired the story is a very personal experience and a relationship that I had or have with a bassist. And in our country, I don't know if it's a worldwide thing, but people don't know what the instrument is,
Yeah,
right? So
that's universal for everybody. Like,
so I had some really interesting experiences where I would give my friend a lift because he couldn't carry it sometimes to gigs and he'd finish late. And we were literally pulled over by the cops who were like, "What is this thing?" They literally thought it was a dead body. The guy was like, "I want to see it," and open the bag. Yeah, because we had to drop the front seat, so he wanted to see it. And we're like, "No, it's a bassist." And he's like, "What's that?" And we're like, "It's a bassist, it's an instrument." So kind of those experiences and experiences of my friend having to walk to go catch a taxi, is what we call in South Africa, um, and make this long trip to get to wherever he needed to get to. I just felt like, there's a lot of story there that I've never seen myself as a musician as well. And I wanted to tell that story of just a classical bassist in informal settlements. And the very first shot that I had when I was conceptualizing the film is like, wouldn't it be cool just to see somebody playing classical in a shack? I've never seen that image, and it's just communicates so much. So that's kind of was my starting point. Yeah.
Yeah, because it kind of reminds like my great grandfather back in the day. They playing jazz music in a shack, and that was a thing. And you see old pictures of like they played in here. So I mean, it was kind of cool seeing that. Like, oh, this is very intimate. Like he's like you said, he's playing in a shack, and everybody's kind of like listening to it like very intensely. Like, oh, this is actually really good. So clearly, like I said, you did a good job of really capturing him being a best bassist. And it, to be honest, I think it did help. Hopefully, it helps people kind of inform like, oh, that's what they do.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah, so that's actually was a very intentional thing when I was writing the script. It's got layers to one being about a day in the life of a musician who's trying to make it, and on another level, it's an educational piece for those experiences that I had with people don't know what the instrument is, what notes it plays, how it's built, and what the sound it makes. So even down to him with the monologues that you see in the film, it's this educational piece of him educating you on the telling you his life story, but educating you about the instrument, telling you about what the bow is. That, oh, this bow is actually made out of horsehair, and this is the sound it makes, and the bass is part of the string family, and it comes with the cello and the violin, and yeah, it's just done in a very creative, artistic, emotional way. Yeah.
yeah, was there ever like kind of like when you're writing this, was there ever a moment where you didn't want to like, you kind of wanted to like, I guess Hollywoodize it a little bit, like to where there's some sort of like kind of like, oh, this is happy, but like kind of had to pull yourself back a little bit.
Yeah, I mean that throughout the whole process, especially when I started getting, because the one big thing about the film is that it was funded by the National Film and Video Foundation. Shout out to them. They are an organization in our country that's very committed to empowering young emerging filmmakers. So when I got a script editor, they were like, maybe that we should add this, maybe we should add that. So that's part of the process, and that's the most difficult part is that people try to pull you in different directions. But for me, I was like, no, there's a clear intention of this. There's a lot of things that I could do and add to it and dramatize this and gloss it up. But it's not about that. It's just about a simple story of somebody trying to make it and overcome very difficult circumstances. And I think we all can resonate with that on some level. We all aspire to be something or want to be something. And there's not always an easy path to get there. And through this character, I just want to inspire people that are going through the same thing. That, keep pushing. The breakthrough will come. Yeah.
Yeah, so, 'cause, with the advent of where the internet is now, because I mean, years ago, being in high school, I never would have thought you would see people be able to like, oh, I just did a short, I put it on YouTube. It's there and open. So, do you feel like it's, especially from where you're from, do you feel that open access to just put everything out there has made it easier to do this kind of film?
Most definitely. I feel like the world is getting smaller and smaller, or rather closer to each other. We're not the idea of sharing a piece of work of art with people around the world is not as daunting anymore, you know. And I think me being here right now is a testament to that. That we are accessible. We are starting to kind of connect. People in the US are starting to know a lot more about Africa and what we're doing as creatives, and vice versa. So, and it's a very beautiful thing because creatively we get to influence each other, learn from each other, and just yeah,
Yeah,
man.
because I'm always what I like about your picture too was that it also kind of gives you like people have a perception about Africa, just period, the whole country as a whole, and whether like I said, if you're informed like me and some of my friends, it's like, oh, Africa is not what you think it is. It's actually nice. It's great. Like I said, issues just like every other country, but it kind of provided a different perspective. So, on top of you informing people on the music aspect, do you feel it also helps people kind of inform of the country itself as a whole in terms of showing it's not just one thing, it's actually many things?
Yeah, that was probably one of the biggest artistic choices that I wanted to bring across was I didn't want to make it about I don't want to make it about the township per se, and oh look, this is poverty. This is, I mean, those are part of what influences the character and his backstory, but I wanted a universal story about just trying to make it, and pushing through, yeah, because a lot of the films that come that have we had an era of really I don't know if you know a film called Tsotsi, which won an Oscar from South Africa. We had that era of film from our country, which is all gangster related stuff, crime, So for me personally, as a filmmaker, I don't really want to go down that avenue. I want to entertain people, I want to inspire people, and I want to touch people's hearts. And yeah, that's what I hope the movie does.
Is there kind of any sort of genre that you want to kind of tackle after this, or do you kind of want to still continue these kind of like films? Because, like I said, you say you didn't want to do the gangster stuff clearly, which that makes perfect sense and stuff because you have to diversify. But is there anything else you want to dive into, like maybe comedy or maybe like light drama, so to speak?
Yeah. So my next film is going to be a dark comedy. I think Opus was a very personal story that I had to get out because it's kind of my life experience. It's something I really went through in being this kid who doesn't belong or is an outsider because of what you like. I mean, as soon as you become a musician, you're automatically going to be a very different kind of person because you have to practice a lot. You have to be in isolation a lot. But when you put it in a context of a township, and then you decide to play classical music on top of that, and people, you just don't connect with a lot of people and they look at you weird, and that's why I've got those undertones in the film. um, so for me it was very personal and I had to get this one out. But my next film, I just want to have fun and I'm going to play a lot with a lot more dialogue, because with this film it's kind of like I see it as a silent film. It's like it's poetry, so yeah, that's as much artistic kind of indulgence that I'm gonna get into. Yeah, so my next film is gonna be more lighthearted.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good segue for the last question. So, you said you wanted to kind of do more dialogue for this dark comedy. So, do you feel that's more of a challenge for yourself to kind of like, all right, I gotta write some dialogue and things like that? So, I guess kind of a preview, so to speak. What do you feel your process is going to have to be for doing something like that?
Yeah, I was very strategic with my first film. Like I said, I see it as a silent film, and it's because I wanted to just understand framing and music as a character in the film. So I had to sit a lot with the composer and create the soundscape of the film. But for the next one, it's also strategic in just taking it up a notch and just playing with dialogue. So I'm gonna have to obviously do a lot of research. I'm watching a lot of films that play within the style of comedy that I want to tackle. Because we also have a very specific style of comedy in South Africa, but I'm trying to move away from that because I think the biggest thing with me as a filmmaker, what informs me, is I want to create universal stories that connect with people from anywhere around the world. So, yeah. So I have to find the right tone of comedy and that it can translate. And even though I want to play on the nuances of things that are happening in my country, it still needs to be accessible to everybody else around the world. Yeah.
Well, thank you for taking time to talk to us. Like I said, great film. Like I told somebody before, it feels like the the theme of this whole film festival has just been like, man, they are hitting people in the feels, this drama stuff. But like I said, it's definitely a change of pace because you watch a lot of action and comedy, and it's like, all right, well, I'm fine with like shedding a tear or two, just like, oh man, this is crazy. So, but thank you for taking time to talk to us.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Take it easy.